Okay, so this is B483. We're discussing Progresso Financiero, their their situation here. So the first question is, what are the possible causes of Progresso's poor sales performance? Landon, do you want to take that first one?
Yes, so I think there are quite a few things that are leading to it. I think that first of all, the setup they have with Sears, where the Sears customers are motivated to send them to the Citibank to get a loan. I think that's really cutting down in their sales and the number of loans that they can give out because there's really no advantage for the Sears customer, or not customers, but the Sears workers to send them to Progresso. And then just as it said in the case, I think that the training, the AEs were not prepared, and a lot of them were just they were going along with their base pay, but they weren't motivated to earn their commission. And I think a lot of it just kind of went back to their recruitment process. They didn't pick people because they were skilled. They just kind of picked anyone that was willing to try it out, and friends of friends and stuff like that. So I think their recruitment process really cut down on their sales because they didn't have the most efficient workers that were able to convert all customers into a paying customer, so they weren't grasping every opportunity. There are more, but those are the biggest ones I saw.
Awesome. Herb, what do you think?
Well, one thing I had down is their partnership with Sears and Kmart. I mean, both of those used to be juggernauts, but they're failing companies, and they've been failing for the last 15 plus years. So I don't understand why they chose them. I think they were just excited to get some name brand, a national chain to sign up with them, and they should have been a little wiser in that decision, just like Landon alluded to the employees not having any incentive to push Progresso. Poor relationship between the store manager and the employees based on their initial hiring process, hiring cashiers out of the store. So of course that's going to cause friction. And then as the company moved and grew, I think the guy's name was Dylan, and then some other managers as well. They didn't speak any Spanish. And then on the other hand, they had some upper level managers that I can't remember what that lady's name was. I think she was from Colombia, and she spoke only Spanish. So just I can imagine that's a tremendous language barrier. So even if you have somebody who's translating back and forth, a lot of it still gets lost in translation. And then just their forecast model was just completely, I don't know what they were smoking, but they must have been smoking something in those tiendas. The founders, in their first month, they closed 30 loans between both of them, so 15 apiece. And yet they expected AEs to close 55 of them every month. So I'm not sure where that came from. And the other thing was I think it was, I think the case study was referring to Kmart and Sears. I can't remember, but somewhere I read that only 55% of the applicants actually were approved. So you already have a low rate of customers or potential loan applicants coming to the stand, getting them started, right? And then out of those that you complete the whole application process with, a little bit over half of them get approved. And that, again, is just not good economics. And I wonder if that's the reason for their high acquisition rate. Anyways, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Herb. There's just so many problems. It's like, just pick one, I guess. But they they didn't have good accounting for, like, they had to hire those 2 guys, and even then it wasn't like super good. You know, so if you don't know about your business, if you can't get reliable data, it's like if you're a doctor and you don't know what part of the body is wrong with the patient. You know, it's you can't do anything about fixing them. But so I thought they're just, if they would have just had accounting practices, at least they'd be able to figure out, hey, this is what we're doing wrong in this area, and this is what we need to fix. But kind of like the last one with Noodles and Company, he just didn't have the right accounting practices in the beginning, and it really, really hurt him.
Yep,
So,
I was reminded of that as well.
Yes, accounting is so important. But so next question: what options are available to improve in performance? Herb, do you want to start us off?
I think the big thing is, and I think it was Landon who alluded to it, the lack of training. I think those AEs, they just need to be properly trained, to have some quick metrics to weed out the ones where you don't even want to spend time with them. You guys know I work for Coca-Cola. We get prospect calls all the time where somebody calls the Coca-Cola 800 number and says, "Oh, I'm the next big thing. I want to allow Coca-Cola to offer their beverages in my store." Right? And then I go out and just within a couple of minutes, I know whether or not that guy or that lady is worth my time. And I think that's what they need to train these AEs for. To just quickly, hey, do you have this? Do you have that? Do you have that? How much money? I don't know. How much money do you have in cash? Do you make in a month? How long have you been renting? And what was the other thing? Referrals or something like that, or bills, right? So, anyways, they should just have a quick metric. Hey, if you get a check mark in these 4, 5, 6 areas, let's talk. If you're missing half of them, you know, good luck. Or tell them, hey, here are some steps you can take to improve in this area, and then come back to us, right? And then Sears and Kmart, I just feel it was not a good partner. They should have really focused on some other options. I'm not really sure how good a partnership with a straight retailer. Now, I know Kmart sells groceries, I think, but not a big portfolio. I think they will be better off, you know, partnering up with some kind of grocery chain that has a predominantly Hispanic clientele.
Yeah, that's some. It's just one thing on top of the other for that. But yeah, that's really good points. Or Landon, what do you think?
I agree with Herb. I think that the training needs to be improved. Who they're picking, especially when they went from the AE to the DSM. They chose the DSMs from the AEs, you know, and they weren't experienced and they weren't trained in terms of management either. So now the AEs aren't trained and their managers aren't trained, and it's a chain reaction. No one's getting what's supposed to be done because no one really knows what's going on, you know. They bring in these other guys and they hire a bunch of other guys, end up firing them, go into another one, you know, because I don't think they have a clear business model. And I think one aspect that I thought of, and I know they've chosen the Hispanic population as their target market, and I can understand why. But I almost feel like they've limited themselves by just catering to the Hispanics, and I see why they chose them, because they have the biggest issues with gaining credit. But there are a lot of people that have issues gaining credit that can benefit from it. And I think they could expand a little more into that crowd instead of focusing solely on the Hispanic crowd. Look at others who need credit, let them come along. And I think And the other thing, like Herb mentioned, I think the language barriers between management and the workers is just another issue that's brought up, that things can't really get communicated when you can't talk to your manager, you know. So as far as options, I really think that training and possibly expanding their market to include others that need credit instead of just the Hispanic market.
Yeah, that's totally true.
I'm sorry. The only concern I have with that is, remember they used those call centers down in Mexico, and I'm sure part of the reason was, one, there were native Spanish speakers, and two, they were probably dirt cheap.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. That was one thing that I thought of.
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that. That's a good point, Herb. Probably, yeah, if they were to move it, it might cost them
More.
That's a good point.
Of course, they could hire an Indian call center.
Yeah, so no one can understand them.
Well, I agree with both of you. I just think they really need to, you know, like you both said, just focus on sales, focus on training, and they might need to get their numbers in, you know, get realistic numbers. You know, I could say I'm going to have $2 billion in sales, but it doesn't really matter if I'm only getting a certain amount. So I think the more realistic that they are, you know, the happier their investors will be, because they won't keep letting them down. If they're more realistic with the sales numbers, and just, I think just training the salespeople and kind of cycling through the old ones that aren't performing after a while to get some new, hungrier ones, maybe with better options. I think that'd be a good step in the right direction. So next is, which elements of the business model are validated? Why do you think so? So I guess with this one,
you asked the wrong question. The question should read, what elements, if any?
If any. That is true. That is true. There's definitely a market for, you know, loans for this, you know, these Spanish-speaking people, and it was set up in such a great way, like great ideals. But you know, I think the only thing is that there's certain amount of those Spanish speakers that need loans. I don't think there's the same amount of. I don't think the market is as big as they think, but I think there is a market for it. So, what do you think, Landon?
I completely agree. I think they've overestimated their sales, and now they're seeing that the market's there, but in much smaller numbers. And I the same way you look at it, Austin. I think that they've got this crowd that comes into these grocery stores and they get a loan once, and then they hope that they'll get another loan. But how many people really get that many loans over and over? And I know there's obviously some that do it more than once, and I just don't think there's as many out there as they think there are. And they're not doing a very good job of going after the ones that are there. But I do agree that their approach to credit, in terms of credit and helping build credit, is probably about the only thing I think their business model has really has gotten. You know, instead of looking at the FICO score, they're using their own metrics, which is smart, because from what I've seen from the loans they make, they seem to do good with getting repayments. So I think they've got that part down, but the rest, kind of like Herb said, you know, there's not a lot going for them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Herb?
Yeah, I think their motives are commendable. I think it's socially responsible to help. Obviously, the people who would seek a loan are people who are working, right? And they earn a living. They're not living off of the welfare system. And some of them just need to be shown the way. I just don't think with the principles that, what was it called, the 7 pillars of their business or whatever it was called. I just don't think that that can be implemented as a for-profit business. I think it would make a great case for some kind of charity or some kind of foundation, but I don't think that with the interest rates and the fees that they want to charge, I just don't think that there's enough money to go around and make this a profit center. In addition to, I'm not sure how, personally, I'm not sure how I would feel making money off of the poor. So I think their thinking is in the right place, their hearts are in the right place, but the execution itself does not lend itself to be a profitable business.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the numbers are just, I don't know who was in charge of creating the numbers for it. I don't know. There and Herb, is that your spreadsheet?
Yeah, so I opened it already because I am so freaking confused.
It looks good.
This part of what we have to do for our personal. So the important question I had is that $55. Are they saying to only apply that to the first loan? Because if you apply to both loans, their profit really goes down to 2.
Right. I actually thought it was both, but
see, that's what I had done first, and then it just really. I mean, there's $26.80 here because on the renewal loan, if I have entered the correct numbers on the renewal loan, you're already losing money.
Right.
Yeah, up here, $80 by 65% by 80%. Right here, the formula, and then interest cost 55 on both.
Right.
The loan value 900, and then again 900 times 65 times 80%, and the loan cost, which is the loan value times 10% for both of them. So unless I screwed up, there's no way for them to make any money really.
And that's where I was confused as well, because I know it was the interest. It might have been for me. I'm not sure which applied to which loan, because there's almost like a double interest, because there's the interest and fees per loan, which I got to like $279.45, and then there's the interest, which I wasn't sure if the 55 applied to the first, both, or just the second. So I don't know.
And then the other thing is, can you really already build your product on the assumption they're going to renew the loan?
That is exactly what I was thinking, and they did the 65% because that's about their renewal rate, but I think it's faulty thinking to even include that, You should focus on the ones you have and not even include ones that you hope to get, especially on your profit analysis like this. I don't understand why it's included at all. But yeah, I was confused. I had the same thoughts. I don't know. The $55, I personally did it just on the original loan, and didn't include it. And then let's see, I'm trying to look and see where our numbers differ, but they all look pretty similar. Yeah, when I did it, I thought that they were making no money. They were barely breaking even. Like you right there, Herb, you have it at 27 cents. I have it at $4. So, so yeah, it's not a lot.
Yeah, I think it's good that we get some different numbers as well. But honestly, I think with this case, I just don't think they're specific enough with the numbers. But either way, any way I do it, they're not very profitable. But I don't know. So moving on here. So I think we've shared our alternate points of view on that one. How much profit does Progresso earn on a new loan with the current number of loans per month at a grocery store location? So Herb, I think, discussing this a little bit, right?
Yeah, so that's the $2,000 rent. Then the AE compensation. I hope I understood that correctly because it said fixed cost
right,
or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I assumed that was their cost per loan location. But somewhere else it said that they're making $8 an hour. So that's more like $1,300 a month.
Yeah.
Total loans of 110, which was mentioned in the example. Commission rate at that time of $35 at 55 loans each. So that's a 30-50 total commission per store. So total cost per store is 8,968 divided by 110 is 8,153, and then the 8,180 minus 8,153 is a 27% profit per loan. So you're really breaking even.
Right.
Yeah. What number did you guys use for the number of sales or the number of loans per month at the grocery store locations right now?
But the current, I didn't see any.
Yeah, I found somewhere where it said that they were doing like 30 loans a month, which is the number I used, which they weren't even breaking even at that rate. They still needed to sell quite a few more.
Was that the 30 loans that they did in the first month?
I'm trying to find it again. I think it said that they did 30 loans. They were making 30 loans a month in their Kmart locations. But let me try and find that again.
Oh yeah, that's on page 8 on the sales productivity.
Page 8
is also for the Progressive grocery stores. So 60 loans.
No, 60. Okay.
That's on page 8. Okay. I'm sorry, page 8 in the first paragraph on the sales productivity. I totally looked over that. I missed it. It says the Progressive grocery store locations are producing 60 loans.
Well,
so if I enter 60 here, they're losing money.
27.
I mean, it's the same thing further down when it said, didn't it say somewhere that their acquisition cost was $400 when they started it, I believe. Yeah, on page 5 in the second paragraph, last sentence. So this was when they did the 30 loans between the two of them, the two founders. Average CPA was $400. Why you would then proceed and try to turn it into a business idea? What the heck?
Yeah, when you're making at most $180 off of it, it takes you $400 to find that.
A little further down, it says that each account was worth $180 to the company over the life of the loan. Okay, 400 minus 180, you're $220 in the hole.
Yep.
Yep. Just like I was saying, I'm not sure who is the genius that did the numbers at the beginning. I think they messed up a little bit.
Yeah. Well, okay. Here in the case it says that the board and the investors. This is what they said about it. They said the cost of customer acquisition never seems to be lower than the lifetime value of the customer. And
What was that? What page?
on page 13.
I want to
So
highlight.
they're trying to find a path profitability, but I just don't see that it's there. How much it costs them to get each customer, and the most you can get out of them is a couple $100. You have to get them at 4 or 5 loans before that customer is profitable for you, you know?
Yeah.
Right. So what did you guys get? Or I guess let's just go with you, Landon. What did you get for break even?
Let me see. I got, and mine's different because I was looking at my contribution margin.
Okay.
Compared to Herb's, and mine's different. So this is gonna be fairly different. Let me do it again.
So if I use the goal seek formula in Excel, I come to 109.35 loans that you need to break just to make $0.
So rounding up just 106 for you, Herb.
No, 109. So right at the 100 base.
Okay.
You know.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because I have my contribution margin's high. I have my contribution margin for each loan at $170. But looking at yours, Herb, the highest one I see on yours is $81. Is that right?
So that is not the CPA. That's what they would make off of that customer.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So mine's off. What did you get for your contribution margin, Austin, per loan?
Per loan, I got. One sec. I didn't do the margin.
Okay. Well, for mine, at my contribution margin, which is high, I think, my break even was only like 39. But I know that that's not correct because I don't know, it just seems wrong. Okay, I'm gonna look through this again because when I did the expected value of a loan is $180. So I did that plus $180 times the 65% times 80%. So I got the total value.
Renewal loan, right?
What's that?
For the renewal loan.
Right, for the renewal. So the total value I got is $273, just like you have on yours, Herb,
Okay.
for that at the very beginning. But I didn't include the loan loss cost on the renewal loan. I did it solely on the new loan. I don't know if that was correct.
Well, that's where it's not really clear. In my opinion, I don't think you would have the same 10% loan loss cost on renewal loans because those are established customers.
Right.
Right? So I don't think your loss rate would still be at 10%. If it's not 0, I would think it's certainly in the 1 digits.
So we should take that 10% out. You're saying for the second one?
Again, it doesn't state. It doesn't say it clearly. You know, it says subtract loan loss based on 10% of the total expected value to be loaned out. Initial loan of 900. And a renewal expected value of 900 times 65 times 80. So if you do that, if you take 10% off of both of those values, then that is 136.80.
Yeah. I agree with that. Just a matter of how
because yeah, the loan value is 1368, so it's exactly 136.80. And still on the interest cost, it does not make sense to me then it would only be on the initial loan. I mean, the interest cost is going to be on the second too. And you do that, holy cow.
Right.
And that's honestly what frustrates me about this case study, because it just makes no sense whatsoever. These numbers stink.
Yeah, I wonder who said you should really ramp up those numbers and go into business with this, you know. But man,
because even just on all that, okay, you're making $26.80. So first of all, you're losing money on the renewal loan. Okay, so let's say you don't bother with the renewal loans. You do $35. Why would you pursue a second loan when you're losing money? So then you're basing it on $35, right? That's what you're making off of that loaning. What is it called? The opposite of a lender. Anyways, whatever, the customer. But you have a CPA of at least $120, or, you know, in the case study they mentioned $400 up to $1,000 with Kmart, and your profit is $35.
Sad too.
Yeah.
And Kmart.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, Landon.
I was just gonna say real quick. After I included, I get the same number of 109 for break even.
Awesome. So, what was I thinking? We'll continue. I lost it. So, as a group, you must change the current compensation plan to improve the number of loans made per month. So with the fixed, let's see here. So the fixed was 3,118, right?
Yeah.
And that sounds like it was for two AEs.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know. This part kind of confused me as far as what to do in the compensation here. Because it's not like, I don't know, because they're already not making very much profit off of it. So I feel like if they were to give too much compensation, they might start losing money, you know? So I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think they can't give more money in terms of compensation with their compensation plan. The only thing I thought of that might help was lowering the hourly wage so that they would have more incentive to get loans out, you know, because then they have the only way they're really going to make money. But I don't know what the laws are, especially in California.
Yeah.
If you have a commission-based job, do you still have to abide by minimum wage or what? So I don't know. And even then, you're going to have to drop down their salary by so much that I don't think anyone would actually take the job.
Yeah, I have the same concern. I mean, I know with waitresses you can get, or waiters, you can get away with it. But I'm not, like Landon said, I'm not sure what the laws are on a regular employee.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too, Herb, with like restaurants and stuff like that. That would be a good solution though, Landon. So it would definitely incentivize them to do better with, you know, hitting those numbers and those goals that were being set forth at the end. But I don't know. I honestly think it's kind of pessimistic, but I just don't think. I think they really miscalculated the market, and so the goals that they set for, you know, the AEs are just really, really unrealistic. You know.
Yeah. So the one suggestion I wrote down is to, so I don't think it was in this class. It was in another class. If you reduce the cost of goods, that will have more of an effect on your profit than increasing your price, your sale price, right? you can move the needle a whole lot more if you can reduce your acquisition costs. So I put down, I would eliminate AEs instead of having two. I would only have one at each location. But then change the commission. Instead of having to have 15 before you make any money, I would start off with a straight $6 from loan number one, but then increase that rate by $2 for every $10. So 1 through 10 will be 6, and then if you have over that, up to 20 will be $8, up to 30 will be $10, and so on. And then the other idea I had is to work with these grocery stores and get them to sell the loans, or at least the initial prospect. So use those cashiers, I mean, just like they do at Sears and JCPenney's and whatnot, where the cashier asks you if you're interested in opening a line of credit with them. Put some kind of similar process in place with the shop owners and the cashiers. You pay them some commission, and so the cashier just collects that information. It goes to the Mexican call center. They call the customer, the potential customer. They turn in any documentation in by mail to an office in the U.S. where it gets processed. And if they qualify, the call center in Mexico closes the deal. And that way you should have, that $3,000 per location is gone. You don't have to spend that much money.
Yeah, that's a great solution, Herb. That's really well thought out.
I'm sorry, not just the $3,000, but you also cut out the $2,000 rent.
Right.
And so that's what I put on the left-hand side. The example I have in there is with just one AE, but if you take that money out completely, now you're cooking with fire. You're making $73, $74 per loan.
Yeah,
I should put less if we take the 55 in there. 1880. Okay.
I worked at Kohl's when I was in high school as well, and they did something similar, in those retail stores, and I guess it was pretty successful that way. So that's a great idea, Herb. You just you take out a lot of the cost of it, and you really maximize the profits. I like that.
And they could probably do the same thing at Sears.
Right.
And Kmart. I mean, they're still around. They suck, but they're still around.
Well, I know in the case it said that Sears provided the floor space rent-free to Progresso. So if they were able to negotiate that once, I'm sure they'd be able to figure it out again. If they were able to incentivize Sears, I don't think they've really incentivized Sears as much as they've hoped they could. I don't think Sears is getting out of it what they were hoping. I think that's one of the big things that needs to change. But like Austin said, I really like your solution, Herb, cutting down those costs, because a lot of it is stuff that can be avoided. Yeah, I liked that.
So, and since we're already kind of there, so kind of going beyond the compensation plan, let's do the broader action plan and starting with results. So I guess I can start this. I think the only way to manage is managing the activities. I think the results obviously are a result of the activities. So I read a book. It's called, I don't know if you guys have read, it's called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's like a really good book on this kind of stuff. And it basically talks about, only measuring or only really focusing on the lead measures, which in this case would be like the activities that they could do, such as sales, tactics, or things like that. Because once you have, it calls like the results the lag measures, because you'll get them after a certain period of time. So I feel like if they focus on the activities, such as really training, like you're saying, Landon, training the salespeople, and maybe implementing that compensation plan that we talked about, that they'll start to see the results from that kind of activity. What do you think, Herb?
Well, when I worked in aviation 10 years ago, I worked there for about right at 15 years. And the majority of our business was mail order business. So this was kind of pre-internet, not pre-internet, but when the internet didn't really play a big part yet. And we had anywhere between 6 and 10 call agents, depending on how busy we were. And they received a flat hourly rate and then a commission based on how much they sold for the month. And whenever I trained a new call agent, I basically told them, yes, you can do add-on sales, when you sell some paint, also offer some brushes and paint thinner and paint strainers and whatnot. That's all fine and dandy, but the secret is to take as many calls as possible. So you want to take enough time for your customer to feel comfortable with you, but you want to speed the conversation along as much as you can so you can go ahead and answer the next call. So we as management, we would worry about making the phone ring. You just worry about answering as many calls in a day as you can, and then that will show on your paycheck. And it's the same in this case, right? You want to bring in as much traffic, and then you want to quickly pre-qualify that traffic of people who are seeking a loan, and then speed them through the system. And that's how you're going to make money. So I don't, like I said with my solution too, I just don't think that renting a space for $2,000 a month, and then you spend another $3,000 a month on 2 full-time employees that generate between the 2 of them, what was it, 60 loans, I think we said? That's just, it's no, what the heck?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's they were really, really hopeful for the future, I guess. I don't know.
It even I think somewhere in the case study it even said the guy who left the company, it said that he didn't even believe that the AEs were capable of performing at the rate that they kind of set as the expectation. So if one of your founding partners doesn't even believe in the business model and in the expectation for the frontline people, what are you doing?
Yes, for sure. What do you think, Landon?
I agree. I think that they've overestimated it in such a way that, kind of like you were saying, Austin, they've focused on results, and now they have these high expectations that can't really be reached. And now they're starting to focus more on activities. But I think that, just as you said, Austin, that if you can focus on your activities, the results, just as they are said, they are the results. And I do think it's important to forecast to kind of get an idea of where things are going. I don't think that should be their motivation. And I think, just as we've basically said throughout this, instead of focusing on trying to get their AEs to sell 100+ loans a month, they need to focus on how they can make those 30 loans that they get, how can they make those profitable, which is, like Herb said, cut down on the costs that are unnecessary, get rid of some of your AEs. I honestly think it's more about location. I think one location can get about 30 loans a month, instead of trying to get 30 loans per AE, focus on your location, and then say, okay, we need one person to get those. Because I mean, 30 loans a month, that's a little over one per business day, So, I mean, it's not like that's completely out of the question for one person. So, I think that if they can focus on making what they have profitable, focus on their actions to turn that profitable, instead of saying, okay, we need to have 60 to be profitable, or 109, whatever the number is. They need to focus on the things they can change, because I think they've looked at it wrong. They're looking at it as, these are the expenses we have to pay, and there's no way around it, and this is what we need to be profitable. Whereas, just as Herb said, you can cut down costs. You gotta think on your feet a little more. It takes more planning and more execution, but if you want, especially in this situation, if you ever want to be profitable, it's not an option for you. So that's what I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, one thought I just had, maybe if they would advertise themselves in these grocery stores or wherever there's a lot of Hispanic traffic, if they would advertise themselves as a one of those credit repair solutions, but just kind of spin it towards, are you Hispanic? Do you have regular income? Do you live? Or are you a tenant in an apartment for X period of time? Are you lacking credit? And come visit us or call us, and we'll help you build your credit. So that way you already know that when somebody rings up the phone, they're interested, and then already kind of self-screen them.
I like that, Herb, because they gave that example in there with like Jose and whoever else was mentioned. The fictitious people, or like both worked hard, and both just cashed out with a cashier's check and never really established credit. So I really like that. I think that's a good direction that they could take. So for the final question about the AEs, will you keep your current AEs? Do you expect them to stay with the new compensation plan? Where will you find new AEs if the current ones leave? And before Herb started talking about the new plan, I had something different for this, but I think I prefer Herb's plan with just kind of outsourcing most of the work to the Mexico division with the call center, and I think that's the best solution to that problem. What do you think, Landon?
Yeah, I agree with that. I liked Herb's plan. I think either way, they need to at least get rid of the ones that aren't performing. There were some that weren't performing and they didn't seem to care about it. So at the minimum, I would keep the high performers, and give them reason to stay with the new compensation plan that we have. As far as finding new AEs to replace them, I don't know how many you need to replace. If you can compensate the high volume ones enough to where they're reaching the same goals, then I don't know if you need to, just as we've discussed. But if you do, I think just as it said in the case study, they had set up a plan where the recruitment would come from people who were able. They had the process where they would fall through the cracks before they ever got out on the floor if they weren't capable and willing to accomplish it. They had the training, the role plays, and all that stuff. I think that was spot on with as far as getting AEs. But I still lean towards Herb's plan. Try and cut that cost out as much as you can. Outsource it and put that cost on someone else, because in the end they really can't be profitable if they can't get those costs down.
That's totally right. So Herb, are you sticking with your plan here?
Yeah, and I mean, I hate to be a downer, but the more I think about this, I mean, that was just one of the thoughts I had, but the more I think about it, the more I listen to the both of you, I really think they need to cut that CPA down to the single dollar range, just to make money. And I stick to it. I think that's the only way they're going to survive.
Well, this was certainly a hard case with the numbers and trying to fix just a big mess. But anyone have any last summary or last comments on this case?
Well, one thing, thank you for pointing out again about the accounting issues. That didn't even occur to me. But good accounting practices right from the get-go, just like you mentioned with noodles, I think that's critical. You gotta understand your numbers, and you have to know down to the penny where your money is going.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think especially when you have numbers like like this, where you don't have very high profit margins, if any, depending on the numbers, you have to really, just like you were saying, Herb, just get down to the very even the minimal cost of it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't really have much more to add to that.
Well, sounds good. I'll go ahead and stop it here.